Hey, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we are in Portland, Oregon, getting ready to chat with none other than Adam Castaneda with the Sufferers.
How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Starting from the beginning, just so people get to know a little more about you, Adam, I understand you guys are from Houston?
Yes, sir. Houston, Texas.
There you go. And even served me. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that since I've been in Texas.
I'm from the South. What can I say?
Tell me a little bit about your bass journey. How did you get started with this?
I started when I was about 15, around there.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to punk rock. I was into ska music.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents got me a PV copy of a Precision bass, Sunburst with a rosewood fretboard, and pretty standard stuff. But I really wanted to play upright, but there wasn't a place in the school for me. I'd never had lessons or anything, so the punk rockers were like, "You don't really need that. Let's just start a band. Let's just do it." And that's kind of been where I've kind of come from. So from there, I got into reggae and blues and jazz and soul music and a lot of other music. And here I am about 18 years later.
Wow. Now, my understanding is you're one of the founding members of the band. Part of this happened because of you. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, at the time this band started, I was in 3 other bands. I was in a Latino ska band, I was in a reggae band, and I was in a hip-hop band. And of course I thought, well, what do I need? I need one more band. So it was me and Patrick Kelly, our keyboard player. We thought about all the guys around town. That person should really work with that person. It'd be cool to have them over here, and eventually we started writing it down. We had a list of about 9 or 10 guys and Cam, and we started making phone calls. Mm-hmm. And in about a week or so, it was all put together.
Gotcha.
And that's more or less the lineup you see today.
And the Sufferers is a 10-piece band.
Correct.
My understanding, and I'm in pronunciation because it makes me want to say Sufferers.
True.
But there's some phonetic. You guys did a modification with that.
Right. It comes from a movie where it's a 1970s movie from Jamaica called Rockers. It's about reggae musicians, and there's a line, "I and I a sufferer," which kind of means like we're all in this together. We're struggling. So for a while we were the Sufferers. But sufferers gets difficult to say.
It rolls, yeah.
So the Suffers is how we shortened it, and we've kind of been that ever since. It doesn't make sense grammatically, but it fits better on the tongue.
I keep looking for more letters when I'm reading it, going, hey, wait, they forgot something here. Something's missing. Now, musically, they've kind of got you guys, and I guess they have to determine something, and they've got it kind of like Houston soul. But my understanding is you had a lot of influences of different musics, including Tejano, hip-hop, funk, you name it. What kind of blend am I missing?
It's hard to say. I'm not even sure I know. So Houston, a lot of people don't know this about Houston, but it's the most culturally diverse city in the U.S., mm-hmm. more than L.A. or New York or Chicago. So when in Houston, in a day's course, you can hear cumbia music and southern hip hop and chop and screw, and you can hear rock and anything else, and it's not abnormal. That's a normal thing. So when we mix all that together, so yeah, we have a lot of the bass is essentially soul, but on top of that we are adding Tejano, mm-hmm. we are adding reggae, a lot of reggae, and just rock and roll and blues and funk and a lot of other styles, ska music. And it's a really natural thing. We're not trying like, okay, this is gonna be a Norteño song. It's just we're from there, and that's just kind of how that's the stuff we're used to.
Gotcha. Well, and it's interesting because geographically, a lot of times there's influences that will kind of push music, but when you have a melting pot like that, you can get kind of a lot of things.
Sure. I mean, we have Mexico right there. Texas was part of Mexico for a long time. We have Louisiana and New Orleans right there. Mm-hmm. We're in the South. We already have blues and folk and country music, and then hip hop was very big in the 90s and 2000s in Houston. And on top of that, we're just people in 2016, so we have the 2016 radio. So we have all that on top of it,
Gotcha.
So we don't really limit ourselves to say, we're a soul band. It's like, no, we're a band.
Kind of everything.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the nice things about that, I'm sure, is that your public, when they're listening to what you are playing, there's little something for everybody. Mm-hmm. So if they were kind of favoring more, a little hip hop, they're going to go, okay, that was I liked that. That was for me.
Yeah.
Variety's great.
Yeah.
That's
when we first started out, we tried really hard to not play with anyone that sounded too close to us.
Gotcha.
So we would play, there'd be 3 bands on the bill, and one would be a hip-hop band, one would be a ska band, and then it'd be us. And it'd be like, okay, there's something from all those different crowds that people could kind of get into.
Gotcha. And you were touring the Northwest. So how long of a tour? Where are you heading next?
We're in Portland today. Tomorrow we'll be in Seattle. Then we're heading up to Vancouver.
Gotcha.
And then L.A. or San Francisco, L.A., Phoenix. So this was a nationwide tour, split into 2 pieces. We did the East Coast, and now we're on the West Coast. So we're
Gotcha.
about halfway through it. I think we're 10 days in, something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going great.
Well, and if people want to know where you're going, where would they look? Website?
TheSuffers.com, and then at The Suffers and all the social media.
Gotcha. And what projects do you guys have in the works for the future? Working, recording, writing? What's the plan?
So actually, yesterday we were in the studio here in Portland. We had a day off. We were in a studio working on some new demos. So I mean, we've got about 15, 16 ideas.
Nice.
I don't know how many will make the album, or if maybe none of those will. But we were working on about a little over a dozen ideas. So the next album's in the works. Still got a little work to do, but
Gotcha.
it's coming.
And one of the things, what I discover with a lot of bassists that are touring, it's really easy to get immersed in what you're playing right now. But outside of the Suffers, do you have any projects? Do you have anything that you're thinking of working on, or any plans?
You know what? I maybe sort of not really for other projects, but I like to exercise myself musically, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So when I'm home, although this is the style of music we play, I love old folk music and old country music.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm home, that's kind of what I'm getting into, especially the guitar and learning that. And figuring out how that applies to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in no means a folk guitarist, but I like learning the shapes and patterns and melodies and
Sure.
how do you play a bass line and a melody at the same time on the same instrument. That's not something I normally do, and that's just kind of something I'm into, and I've kind of have a little practice routine I'm working through with that.
Gotcha. Well, and I understand, especially with touring, we were talking with Ross Valerie from Journey.
Yeah.
And, their book is their book, and it's been the same book for pretty much for, years and years and years and
wow.
decades.
Yeah.
He's, 40 some odd years they've been playing. But and he's had this project in the back of his head he wants to work on, and he's like, one of these days I'll get around to it. But, here, decades later, it's still just kind of an idea. So it's never a bad thing to kind of have something to think about.
It's good not to get stuck. Especially on tour, you play the same sets pretty often,
Mm-hmm.
And, we've been touring now nationally since about February of 2015.
Okay.
So, I mean, we've played a lot of these songs a lot of times. It's
Gotcha.
good to get the new stuff out, and we're actually playing some new stuff tonight. But
Nice.
but yeah, you can definitely get in that rut, and you got to kind of mentally get yourself out of that and find new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's something you weren't always into or you didn't grow up with, but it's like, hey, this is kind of cool stuff too, and figure it out. That's what I like to do. And a couple weeks ago, I was listening to just Bob Dylan in the '80s,
Yeah.
which is a weird time for Bob Dylan. And I was like, let me just figure it out. Let's see what it's about. And I spent a couple of days just going through it, and it's like, no, maybe not for me every day, but it's good to get my head around it. You got to
Gotcha.
keep yourself out of that rut.
And I know that one thing that all bassists like to talk about is gear. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I might have seen a Gibson. Was that
Yeah.
okay? So you're playing on a Gibson.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about your gear.
I have probably one of the more unorthodox setups. For the past year or so, I haven't been touring with an amp.
Okay.
So I go directly in. For the start in the chain, I have an SG Gibson, SG bass. I love it. Gibson's worked with us a lot, and they're a fantastic company. I love them. From there, I go into a direct box. It's an MXR, DI Plus. That's pretty flat, and then from there, I have a Catalan bred SFT,
Okay.
which is like an SVT modeling or clone, I guess. And then I have a tuner, and that's it. And then I have my in-ears. So the philosophy is sometimes rooms are weird, especially if you're traveling around. You might go a big room, a small room, then you're on TV.
Rooms in Portland are weird. We've been through a few of them. You're kind of going, okay, this is different.
Yeah, we did a tour earlier this year with a band called Lake Street Dive, and some of these rooms were gigantic,
Yeah.
humongous rooms, and I toured for years with an amp and a monitor, and it just so much can go wrong.
Gotcha.
We do a lot of fly-in gigs, and it was like, this got to be an easier way to do this. So with my ears, it sounds consistent every night in my ears, and then I can give our sound woman the tool she needs to make it sound the way she wants it to sound in the room, and there's not a big 8x10 on stage messing up her mix, and I can turn as loud as I want to in my ears, and I love it. It took a little getting used to, obviously you don't have that big vibrating thing, but it's something that I've really kind of come to embrace, and now if there's an odd show where something messes up with the monitor rig and they got to give me an amp or something, it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
So, but I love it. It's a really simple rig, but it works for me.
Well, and the feel of it, that's an interesting point, because we've been to a few, even though they're playing kind of some of the venues like in Portland, which a lot of them are kind of long and narrow because they were built, I don't know, 150 years ago.
Yeah.
It was just kind of the shape. And they've got these big stacks of amps behind them, so you're feeling this thing just pump through you.
Yeah.
And and that's a change. And as long as you're hearing there, and of course you feel the vibrations no matter what. So that's all good.
We did a lot of like summer festivals and stuff, and they're portable stages, and sometimes those floors, they kind of become a bass radiator. So they kind of pump with the PA or the amps on stage. So if you have that plus an amp plus all the monitors, the house and everything, it's a mess. So
Gotcha.
the less you can have on stage, at least for the way that I'm leaning these days, the less I can have on stage vibrating, the better. If it's just in my ears, I'm good. And I've learned to kind of feel the house PA a little bit, so it doesn't feel totally weird anymore. It took a couple of months to get used to, but I'm really liking it a lot.
Gotcha. One last thing, and there's a whole lot of people that would love to be doing what you're doing. As tired of you going, I'm touring since February, all this. What advice would you give to an aspiring musician, a bassist that wants to get into doing what you're doing? What's your gem?
You have to love what you're doing, and I know that's kind of a cliche thing, but you have to be very clear about what do you want to do. Do you want to be in the studio all the time? Do you be like a studio musician? Do you want to be a touring musician? What kind of touring musician? And when you figure out exactly what you want to do, you got to put those things in place to get there. If you want to be a studio musician, then you really do kind of need to live in a city where there is a studio thing.
Yeah.
And you got to meet those people, and you got to put yourself out there and do that. If you want to be a touring musician, then you need to find bands and talk to people and start your own band and really get out there and play shows. And it's not easy at first, and it is a job. It is work. But if you're clear about what you want to do and you're doing that, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Gotcha. Well, and a lot of studio work is drying up.
Yeah.
So because so many people can they can cut a CD in their bedroom if you've got the right software and everything.
Sure.
And so that's changing quite a bit.
It is, and the role of bass and the nature of bass in music is really changing a lot too. There are some guys who say maybe you need to be very unique, that can work for some people. Some people have a very unique thing that they do and they bring that to the thing. I try to focus more on the songs. If somebody brings a song, it's kind of a Lee Sklar kind of mentality, or maybe even a Paul McCartney kind of mentality. Like, you serve the song, and the more you understand about different types of music, the more you can kind of feel that out. So if somebody brings you a old country song, you kind of know what you need to do.
Absolutely. Well, and I was just talking with Lee last week.
I've never met him, but I want to.
He's in Dublin, and we were chatting, and he's 70.
Wow.
And he's still touring. And he's with Toto, and he doesn't
now
have
with
kind
Phil
of downtime.
Collins, I guess.
He's got all kinds of Phil Collins is coming up, and he juggles multiple tours all at the same time. But kind of the key thing that has really worked really well, he's such a nice fellow. He's such a chill guy, and I have to say, most of the bass the lion's share of our people, bass people, they're good folks. They're easy to talk to. They don't really have a terrible attitude. And you get those lead guitar guys, and that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah.
But bass dudes, and Lee's a great example of that. Well, I don't want to keep you because I know this is busy night and all that stuff. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us.
Likewise.
Again, The Sufferers. Look for the website again so that they can double check it.
Thesufferers.com.
Gotcha. Coming to a town near you, and I look forward to see all the great and wonderful things that they'll be doing. This has been Bass Musician Magazine, bringing it to you live from Portland, Oregon.